Madam Chair, you have a live mic.
Thank you. I'd like to call the October 30th, 2025 Big Cypress Basin Board meeting to order. If you will please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance. One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning. I'd like to begin our meeting by congratulating Michael Romano for his reappointment to the Big Cypress Basin Board. And also to congratulate Michelle Lenhard on her appointment to the Big Cypress Basin Board. And Michelle, if you will join me down on the floor for the oath, please. You would raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your full name. I, Michelle Lenhard, solemnly swear that I will faithfully perform the duties delegated to me by law, as a member of the Big Cypress Basin Board, to which I have been appointed, and that I will uphold my duties and obligations to the citizens of Southwest Florida. Congratulations. Michelle, as our newest board member, I'd like to give you an opportunity to say a few words if you'd like.
Oh, thank you very much. It is really my honor to be here today. And I was very excited to be considered for this position. But I have to say, once I sort of started to get a feel for the basin and the staff and what the group really represents, I'm very, very happy to be here and join you. As well as to sort of reunite with certain people on the board I've known for a while and meet new friends too and coworkers. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle, and welcome aboard. Good morning, board members, and for those joining us remotely, thank you for your continued interest and support. As a reminder, today's proceedings are accessible by Zoom, as well as Collier TV and the district's website. Board members, as a reminder, please make sure your microphone is on, and if you speak into the mic so that online attendees can hear you. Move the mic if you turn your head so we can make sure your comments are captured. And please try to get as close to the microphone as possible so that everyone can hear you. To be recognized, please use the large square button on the dais. So you'll come up on my screen and then I'll be able to actually recognize you for comment. At public comment, for those here in person, if you would like to comment on the agenda item, please complete a speaker card from the lobby and bring it up front to Troy Miller. Troy's seated to my right. And if you're joining by Zoom, use the raise the hand feature and Troy will call on you. If you're participating via phone, *9 raises your hand and *6 mutes and unmutes. Today is a special opportunity for us to recognize staff. And we have a special recognition today, and I would like to ask the board to join me down in front of the dais for that recognition.
Yes, line them up there, Chuck. All right, everybody's in place. This is great. Good morning, board members. It is my pleasure to thank and introduce our SCADA team for the project that they worked on in Big Cypress Basin. So the folks here joining us today are Anthony Castle, Curtis Christie, Enrique Rivera, Griffin Fawcett, Isaac Jones, Kevin Latham, Mohammed Ansar, Tracy Wiskovich, William Ochoa Zalea, and not joining us, but also very important, is Luis Rodriguez and Leonard Hoover. So, first of all, before we call the guys up, what I want to tell you all is what SCADA is and why it's so important to us. And then I'll tell you what a great job they did. So first of all, what you have on the screen showing is a snapshot of SCADA. It gives us information all day long, 24/7, every 15 minutes, updating rainfall amounts, what our canal levels are, upstream, downstream of structures. It tells us where our gates are, how much are they open, what's happening all day long, every single day. It is fantastic. And if you think about it, it is like the air traffic controllers. They know what's on the ground, they know what's in the air, they know all the planes' airspeeds, they know what's going on. That's what SCADA is to water management. And when it goes down, as you can imagine, if you're at the airport, it's not a good thing, right? So that's how important SCADA is to the district and for us for what we do for flood control. So now, what the guys did and how great of a project. So we were having some problems. Some of our sites were going down. And during storm events, which is very nerve-wracking. If you guys ever want to see Brad unhappy, have a SCADA site go down during a hurricane. Not, just trust me, he's not happy. So what happened is the SCADA team got together. They listened to our water managers. What's happening? They started, doing some forensics. What's happening to the system? They put a plan together, they figured it all out and started implementing it a year ago. It was in the summer of 2024 that they started, and they just finished this last month or maybe the end of August. So they worked on this for quite a while. 56 sites were upgraded, new panels were put up, robust battery systems, everything that was needed so that we can be more robust and resilient as a community. That is what our SCADA team did for us, and I want to thank them again for all of their hard work and dedication. Thanks, guys. Sorry. Hey, good job. Thank you.
Thank you again. We really, really appreciate the support. And we couldn't, as Lisa said, do without that system that helps us keep a pulse on what we're doing in terms of our water management. So thank you so much. Lisa, that brings us to agenda revisions. Are there any for today's meeting?
No, Madam Chair, there are not.
Okay, that moves us to agenda item abstentions by board members. I'm going to poll the board members for abstentions. We'll start with you, Ms. McLeod.
None for me.
Mr. Romano,
None for me.
Vice Chair Smith,
None for me.
Mr. Hill,
None.
Ms. Leonard,
None.
and I have none. That brings us to approval of the minutes. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Hill, seconded by Vice Chair Smith. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. That brings us to the Basin Administrator's report. Lisa Keeler?
Good morning, board members again. Lots of fun things to continue talking about. And the first one, I'm gonna say it, I do it all the time. I'm gonna talk about that tower. Because it's exciting. It is. I know I'm going to say this. You guys are tired of it. It is the largest capital project that the Basin has undertaken, and it's exciting. This tower, as you can see from the photos, went up in 7-10 days. It was exciting. We had our drone pilot from the field station out taking all kinds of pictures, videos every single day. So the tower is up. It is not yet operational. The second part is the control building comes in and all of the dishes and the wiring, all the IT special stuff goes on. But we are still on track and we should have that up with full communications by the wet season in 2026. So very exciting about the tower. Our canal condition assessment project. It's probably been a couple of years since we talked about it. The intent of this project is to provide a full assessment of all 131 miles of canal to tell us where do we have problems so that we can rank those instead of sending the guys like here or there everywhere. Let's do it methodically. What are our worst problems? Let's tackle those and rank those. So that's what this project is all about. Our consultant is doing a fantastic job. This was supposed to be a 3-year study and we are going to get it done in 2. So that is wrapping up. We just did our last section that they're working on. Once it's completed, we'll be ranking those and we'll be discussing this project a little bit more. The next project that is going to start coming up is a tree removal project. It is vital that we keep trees off of our canals, out of our right-of-way for storms. It is much more expensive to remove trees that have fallen down after storm events, but we don't want them to even get there. When a tree comes down, as you can see from the photograph, it's blocking flow, and our job is to provide that flood control for this community. So it is vital that we do this project. It's going to kick off in January. So we wanted to let you guys know that this was happening before you come back for your February board meeting. We'll probably have another update then. But for people, this is what we hear all the time as we start a project. That tree has been there forever. You know, it was there whenever I moved in. It made it through Irma. It made it through Wilma. It made it through Ian. But as you can see, it's just the right storm. They're all different. And just because a tree has been there for a long time doesn't mean it's going to stay. Okay. So we're going to be tackling that project shortly. Bird Rookery Swamp, another exciting thing we have going, and I think I talked about this at the August board meeting, excuse me. And that is restroom facilities. This is our most popular hiking trail in Collier County. 60,000 people every year. Bob's like, that's close enough. It's a lot. Come out and enjoy Bird Rookery Swamp, and we don't have facilities out there for them. So Rory and his team and land management have been working very hard on this. They tell me they should be out there before Thanksgiving. So one more thing to be thankful for in Collier County is that we will have restroom facilities at our #1 hiking facility. So very excited about what's happening there. One more thing before we get to your meeting dates is, if you notice, we have a new face over there on the dais. We have a new Basin board member, our Basin staff member, which is Celia Seifert. She is going to be your new Basin coordinator and be working with you in the future, and we are so happy to have her. I'd also like to thank Yvette Bonelia. She has stepped in over the last few months when we had the vacancy. So thank you to Yvette. So lastly, Madam Chair, you have your 2026 meeting dates in front of you and in your packet. Unless there are any objections, we will proceed with posting those, and that will be your meeting schedule for next year.
I wanted to make sure all the board members had a chance to look at the meeting dates. Today is an interesting day because we're meeting on a Thursday. We shifted a bit.
They look good to me.
Any comments or questions, Mr. Hill?
I'm trying to find it, actually.
They're not finding it in the folder. Lisa, could you?
It was in your
It was in the
packet
packet.
that was sent out.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. I don't think we have a copy with us.
I have one in my,
Do you?
my
Okay.
board book. Here you go, Lisa. You can put it on the visualizer. These are the proposed dates here. Are there any comments by the board or any questions? Do these look good to everyone? There are no objections, so they look good. All right, great.
Right. Thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments for Lisa? All right, we'll go to general public comment. Next, we're ready to hear from the public. There are 2 opportunities during this meeting for the public to address anything that's not on the agenda. We'll start with anyone in the room who would like to speak, followed by those joining us remotely. Troy, is there any public comment?
Madam Chair, I have no slips submitted for this item in the room and no hands raised on Zoom at this time.
All right, then that brings us to our first board comment. We'll start with Board Member McLeod.
Nothing for me today.
Mr. Romano,
None for me.
Vice Chair Smith.
Not at this time.
Okay, Mr. Hill,
Nothing yet.
Board Member Leonard.
Nothing for me either.
And I don't have anything at this time. So we'll move to our first presentation from Laura Lehman to provide us an update on the Corkscrew Watershed Initiative. Laura, it's all yours.
All right, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Wonderful. Good morning, Madam Chair, board members. It's nice to be in front of you again. I haven't spoken to you since April, and I'm very excited this morning to give you an update on the Corkscrew Watershed Initiative. So when we're talking about the Corkscrew Watershed, I just wanted to step back for a moment and what are we referring to throughout this project when we're talking about the Corkscrew Watershed or the Corkscrew system? What we're referring to is the Corkscrew Regional Ecosystem Watershed, which I think all of you are very familiar with. This area is the largest intact watershed in Southwest Florida. It's a very important natural resource for the area. It spans over 60,000 acres in both Lee and Collier counties. It's home to a wide variety of animals, listed species, has a wide variety of native habitats, and it serves as a wildlife corridor. Through Camp Key Strand and other areas, this natural area connects to huge natural preserves to the south, such as Picayune Strand State Forest, Big Cypress National Preserve, Fakahatchee Strand State Park, etc. This area is important not only locally, but also regionally and nationally, and even internationally. Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary has the largest stand of old-growth cypress in the world. This system provides numerous benefits to not only obviously the natural area, but the urban communities surrounding it as well. This area protects native plants and animals, native habitat. It provides natural flood protection, aquifer recharge, water purification, and it's a great opportunity to also provide public education, environmental education, and public recreation. So I'm excited that we have Crew Land and Water Trust today. They do so much in the area with regards to public environmental education and recreation. So before I go further, I do want to thank the technical working group members who are here today. We have Lee County present, we have Crew Land and Water Trust, we have Audubon here as well. And I like to thank as well Georgia Vince. JTech is our consultant for this project. Georgia Vince is the project manager for JTech. So Georgia, I wanted to thank Georgia for being here today and driving across the state to be here for this presentation. So why was the Course Free Watershed Initiative started? What prompted this project? Essentially, it was the hydrologic impacts that we're seeing in the system. Audubon, thanks to Audubon and their long-term water level monitoring that they've done, which is, I'll talk about this graphic here in a second, they've documented through their research and their long-term monitoring that they've been incorporating for over 60 years. They have close to 70 years now of data. That there are shortened hydro periods in the wetland systems, as well as reduced dry season water levels. So throughout the dry season, the water levels are unnaturally low, and the recession rate, the speed at which that water recedes, during the dry season is a problem. It's way more than usual. And so that's what this graphic, I've shown this graphic at multiple public presentations. This is a graphic that is from a scientific paper published in 2019 by Sean Clem and Mike Duver. And just to keep it brief, this graphic basically shows 6 decades worth of data on the median water levels at Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary's gauge B, which is one of their longest running water level gauge. It's by the boardwalk. And so if you want to just hone in on the red and the orange line, those lines represent the decades starting in 2000 and then 2010. So those are the most recent 2 decades worth of data. And basically, as you can kind of see, that dashed line, mouse works. This dashed line that's vertical just kind of shows the peak of the wet season, and that has generally remained consistent, which is good. But once you finish, once you pass the peak of the wet season, you can kind of see from that red and orange line how precipitously the water levels drop in the dry season. And you can see from the preceding decades, it took a lot longer in the past. That water level receded much more slowly throughout the dry season. So that's the historic condition that we're trying to get back to. And that, coupled with the reduced hydro periods in the sanctuary, has a negative cascading effect on the ecosystem. It affects aquatic food chains. It increases the risk of catastrophic wildfire. It reduces freshwater storage, so it reduces aquifer recharge. And it also changes the timing and quantity of flows to the downstream estuaries. So those are all things that, as part of Corkscrew Watershed Initiative, we're trying to reverse and help restore some of that. So this is just a brief outline of what I'm going to be talking about today. So just again, briefly going over the project objectives. I'll go over some of the restoration concepts that we developed this summer. Just general talk about the project status. I will talk about an update on the early implementation project. So I was before you in April to discuss what the early implementation projects were that the CWI team actually identified. So today I'll just give you a brief update on the status of those and what those projects are, because it's been a few months. And also we've had a lot of great public and stakeholder engagement. So I'd like to just briefly share with you what the team has been working on and the great coordination that we've had with the community. Actually, before I do that, let me, again, just to be more detailed. So with our objectives, again, the goal is to improve hydrology in the system. So increase wetland hydro periods, improve dry season water levels, better distribute flows where needed through the natural system. Those are the main goals. And then, but that's why this study is so important. It's a comprehensive analysis because our other 2 main objectives, aside from improving hydrology, is to reduce flood risk where we can, and also maintain, of course, flood risk. We don't want to increase flooding on any projects. So reducing flood risk is another main objective, along with maintaining water supply. So we don't want to solve one problem and create others. So that's why this comprehensive analysis and the modeling that we're going to be doing is so important. So we're about halfway through. This project got kicked off in March of 2024 and will run through roughly March 27. So it's hard to believe we're already halfway through, but we are, and we've made great progress. The team has been really dedicated. I can't thank the technical working group enough, and JTech and the district staff as well. Everyone's been coordinating really well. We've made a lot of progress. And what's exciting about this study is that it's built on previous work that's been done in the region. There's been a lot of great studies, whether it's flood control, environmental studies, water supply studies. We're really building on all that prior work, and also the work that you, as the Basin, have funded. You have funded restoration work in the area at Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary. You've funded prior modeling efforts. So this is really just building on all of that. At the end of the process, the goal is to identify specific projects that will meet our objectives, and then those will be implemented by various agencies. So all of the members of our technical working group are entities that are responsible for management of the Corkscrew watershed, and they have the ability to fund, implement, and operate projects. So the goal is that various agencies will be able to implement the projects that we finalize. Another important goal of the project is to identify early implementation projects, and I'll go into this a little bit more later in the presentation, but these are essentially projects that can be started now while this planning process, continues, and they'll be handled separately and outside of the scope of CWI, but our scope was to identify what can be done early in the watershed that does not have to wait, for the end of the planning process. What are no regret type strategies or projects? So again, I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then once we enter into the final report at the end of next year, then these projects can then proceed to final design, funding, permitting, and then construction. So I'll try to be brief on this slide, but this is our project status. What we've completed so far is, obviously gathered a bunch of data in the region. We've developed our work plan, developed goals, performance measures, and metrics, refined the BCB watershed model, which is the model that we're using for this project. So we're building on all the prior work that Big Cypress Basin has done to create this integrated groundwater surface water model, and that's what we're using for the project. But it needed refinement for the specific project area that we're working on. So that was a big effort, and JTech did a great job on that. We've been coordinating on the early implementation projects, and JTech just finished up the existing conditions model simulation, and we've identified this summer our restoration projects and had a public meeting in August. So I'll go through that a little bit briefly later in the presentation as well. So what we're working on right now is we're in the final stages of finalizing our project alternatives and our project matrix. So just in a nutshell, that now that we've identified potential restoration projects, we've formulated those and lumped them into alternatives, combinations of projects essentially that we think will best help us meet our objectives. So we have 5 project alternatives, and then the project matrix is a structured framework to look at these projects and determine which ones should be modeled. So in the end, we'll be modeling 3 project alternatives. And again, the alternatives are a combination of the projects. And then we've already started work as well on the future baseline conditions model. So that's setting up our future, without project condition. And so JTech has already started gathering data on that. That's looking at like future land use, future rainfall, future land use maps, things like that, future developments that are coming into the area, population projections, things like that. So that's what we're working on right now. And then next year, the big task is really just to actually model the alternatives and see, see where we end with that and which of the alternatives actually help us meet our objectives so that we can come up with the final proposed restoration solutions. So this next graphic just kind of gives you a year-by-year description of what tasks we're working on. So again, next year, a lot of modeling, the future baseline conditions model, as well as modeling of the actual alternatives. And then the final report and conceptual plans at the end of the year with our final proposed restoration alternatives. And then we'll wrap up in 2027 with additional public meetings and a presentation to this board. So I really just want to commend the team. We've had great coordination with stakeholders in the region. We've met with more stakeholders than this and, coordinated with a lot more stakeholders than this, but this list is literally just what we've met with so far this year, is who we've met with this year. So since I've seen you in April, these are all the entities that we've had coordination meetings with. These are either public stakeholders, public entities in the area, private developers, landowners who are adjacent to the project and within the project boundary, but adjacent to the natural area. So I'm excited. We've gotten great input from all these entities. That's really helped us to develop our restoration concepts. And all these entities are very engaged. They're tracking CWI, and we've had some initial meetings, but we will continue to meet with them throughout the process. And if there's additional stakeholders as well that would like to meet with us and that we hear about, we're happy to coordinate with them as well. But these have been very fruitful and helped us, like I said, to develop our restoration projects. So in terms of public meetings, we've had 2 public meetings already. We had one last summer, and then we had one this August. This August, we presented to the public our potential restoration projects and concepts, and that went very well. We've also had presentations about CWI at various conferences and workshops and things like that. So we've really tried to get the word out about the project. And I do want to thank Ms. Roman. I know you've been at many of these and you've provided opening remarks at all of our public meetings. And, your words are always very powerful and inspirational. So I want to thank you for your efforts at these meetings to support the project. Okay, so this graphic is just a brief sort of description of how we're structured. On the right-hand side, these are studies that have already been done in the region. So really, just like I said earlier, this project is building on all the prior work and studies that have been done in the region. So that's what we're trying to represent on the right side of the graphic. And then in the middle, taking all of that along with public input, our technical working group input from district staff, we've come up with our potential restoration projects. So we have 9 potential restoration projects. I'll just briefly go through them later, an overall summary. And then again, in the middle there, you see 3 alternatives that have a combination of multiple individual projects. That's what we're going to be modeling. And then through that modeling analysis, we will identify the final selected alternative. And then on the left-hand side there, our early implementation projects that we've already been working on. So this is just generally the big picture of what our restoration projects encompass. Like I mentioned earlier, we want to improve wetland hydrology in the system, and that includes extending the wetland hydro periods, improving internal flow and distribution, decreasing over drainage at the south end of the system, and that's both in the Flint Penn Strand area and the Shady Hollow Boulevard Corkscrew Canal area. There's opportunities to increase stages where needed in the wet season versus the dry season. Ways that we can do that are moving more water in from the north, holding more water back from the south, or both. And the other thing I want to point out on this graphic is you see some green areas and some brown areas. So you can imagine this system is over 60,000 acres. So the hydrologic issues are not uniform throughout the system. Some areas have too much water throughout the entire year for a variety of reasons. There's nuances to that as well. And then some areas are too dry. So in the middle of the graphic, you can kind of see Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary. And that has, as I mentioned, reduced hydro periods, but also reduced dry season water levels. The team has identified that the northern portion of Flint Penn Strand also could use more water. And so there's 2 main flowways as well that we've identified. There's this western flowway that we're calling it, water that's coming down from the north by the airport, Southwest Regional Airport mitigation area to the south under Corkscrew Road, and that helps feed Flint Penn Strand in the western flowway. And then on the eastern side, we've got, Corkscrew Marsh. And then that water flows, south through through Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary and then Bird Rookery Swamp. So it's a large system, and thanks to our technical working group who have expertise in this area, on the ground knowledge of, the various areas, that's been so useful. We've been able to create this map that kind of shows there are differences throughout the system that we're trying to balance. So not only are we trying to balance the different needs of the different areas of the ecosystem, but also balancing our overall objectives, improving the water levels in the natural system. And again, reducing flood risk where we can, and then maintaining water supply. So this slide, just briefly, this is high-level overview of what our restoration concepts are. So one of the goals was to restore the, I'll just go ahead and put them all on here. Restore the northeast-southeast flowway. So that's improving water from Corkscrew Marsh to Corkscrew Swamp. There are some impediments to flow in the central portion of the system here. There's a road here called Washout Road that's used for access for land management by not only the district, but Crew and Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary. So there's some opportunities there to improve water flow through that area. We probably need some more culverts. And then there's also an old historic fish farm that's on Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary's property that's blocking flows. There's berms, and that have been there for quite some time, but that's an opportunity for us to improve flows and let more water flow to the south and alleviate some of that issue that we're seeing in the Corkscrew Marsh. I will say, though, that the hydrology in Corkscrew Marsh is also affected by what's happening to the north. So, we understand that there are nuances to that system. So that's one goal. And then the other goal is Bird Rookery Swamp, to have some hydrologic improvements there, trying to provide a more natural surface and groundwater flow through that area. We've got the Bird Rookery Trail. There's already a lot of culverts there, but we're looking at potentially putting in adjustable weirs or culverts, so that we can better manage the water and hold some of that water back. So that's one thing we're looking at, and that will help, we're thinking, improve hydrology in the Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary as well. For hydrologic improvements along Shady Hollow Boulevard, there are some berm breaches, for example, in the Shady Hollow Boulevard berm. There's some uncontrolled culverts in that area. So anything that we can do to reduce the over drainage that's currently happening in the Shady Hollow Boulevard area, that's another area we're looking at. And there's some different opportunities there. So we have a couple of different projects proposed in that general region. And then for the western flowway, we want to, improve flows between the Airport Mitigation Park and Flint Penn Strand. The Airport Mitigation Park has notified us that, they're having issues as well with water for too long. It's making it difficult to manage some of their natural areas. So, that's again, trying to get, if we can, a little bit more water to the south through that northern portion of Flint Penn Strand. And that should also help augment, the effectiveness of the Kuiper Preserve project, which I'll get to in a little bit. So those are just kind of the high level concepts. So basically, we have about 3 or 4 projects that go along with each of those concepts. So I don't have slides. I didn't want to bog you down today with all the details of all the the 9 projects, but our technical memorandum that goes through in detail all these projects and has all the information, that has been posted to the public website. If you're interested, I can give you the link, and if you wanted to read through that in more detail. Okay, so now I just wanted to give a brief update on the status of the early implementation projects that I spoke to you about in April. And again, these are separate projects being handled outside of, but parallel with CWI. And this was a really important goal of the project, as I mentioned, to identify what can be done early in the watershed. And the team has done a great job coordinating on this. We had a lot of ideas for early implementation, but some ideas either just didn't have funding, or the team just wasn't comfortable because we didn't want to have unintended consequences. So it seems like a short list, but anything with major hydrologic impacts, is going to be part of what we're modeling, basically. So we've made great progress on these early implementation projects. So the first one was like a 320 acre approximately area that is on the south side of Horseshoe Swamp Sanctuary and bordering Bird Rookery Swamp that is owned by the state of Florida, but nobody was managing it for several years. Audubon had been managing it, but their lease expired with DEP. And so we were able to work with DEP last year and this year, and we were able to get this area added to our water management district, land management plan and area. So I know our land management staff have already been out there. They're looking at the area, trying to determine what next steps are for management. So they're already taking a look, but we were excited that at least we filled that gap in land management. So that's taken care of. The Kuiper Preserve project, that's a major flood control and environmental restoration project in the western portion of the system in Flint Penn Strand that Lee County is embarking upon. So they are working on that. They're currently working out their scope of work with their consultant. So that's commencing as we speak. So I will be talking more about that in a minute, but that's great news. So that project is commencing, and Lee County, that was a major acquisition for Lee County within the Crew area, and this will help not only flood control, but environmental restoration as well. Lee County has taken an active role. They've been a huge partner in land acquisition in Crew. So there was one parcel we were looking at that we had identified, from before, that's right on the north side of Horseshoe Swamp Sanctuary. It's this here on the map. That's about 100 acres. And it's still on the acquisition list for Conservation 2020, but it was recently recategorized as a Tier 2 property. So it's not the highest priority, but it is still on the list. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. But so that's at least still on the acquisition list. It just, it may not happen as quickly as if it were a Tier 1. I also want to thank Conservation Collier. I mean, they, of course, have always been a strong, taking a strong lead with land acquisition in Collier County. We've been coordinating very closely with Conservation Collier. They are looking to acquire additional parcels in Red Maple Swamp Preserve, which is on the south side of Bird Rookery Swamp. There's about 60 acres of privately held lands within that preserve, and they've been working to acquire those. We did share our Course Watershed Initiative flyer with them. So they're planning, when they send out next year letters for land acquisition, they're going to include the Course Watershed Initiative flyer. So we thought that was a good partnership there. And then just in general, with the technical working group, we've really worked closely together to come up with our priority parcels. We're looking at the watershed and that we're trying to improve hydrology. What are our key parcels that the CWI team would like to see acquired? And so we've come up with that initial list, and we're continuing to work on that. And, various members of the technical working group are sort of taking the lead on various parcels. So I want to commend the team for getting together and working on that. Just big picture for land acquisition and landowner coordination. We've reached out to several landowners in the area. We want them to be aware, of course, of the project and, want their input. We're with these adjacent landowners, we're coordinating on land management strategies, conservation strategies, access to Crew, because there are definitely areas where we could use better access for land management. And so, the whole team is working, keeping that in mind and working on that as we meet with landowners and developers. And we understand that, fee simple acquisition is great, but that's not always the only option. So we're definitely trying to look outside the box. Are there other ways we can acquire property, conservation easements, land swaps, mitigation parcel donations? Florida Wildlife Corridor is active in this area, that foundation, and they can maybe help us acquire some parcels. So we're really trying to think outside the box and look at all options instead of just fee simple, because that's not always, the easiest route. And again, I think I mentioned this in April, but the Crew project is a Florida Forever project. So Florida Forever is the state's land acquisition program, and this area remains a high priority on that list. So we are on the Florida Forever plan list. We're number 4 for regional partnerships and incentives. So this area does remain a priority for the state for land acquisition. And I really just want to highlight the efforts that Lee County and Collier County have been making, and for land acquisition in the area. Lee County has been acquiring lands in Crew for decades, particularly Flint Penn Strand. And I think they're over 37,000 acres now that they've acquired, which is amazing. So I mentioned the Corkscrew tree property, that 100-acre property. That's a tier 2 now, and that change was very recent. So Lee County 2020, I think it was in September of this year, is when they modified their land acquisition program to make it a tiered system. So that's a very recent change for Conservation 2020. And, Lee County has been making an excellent effort. They've made so much progress acquiring land in this area, but they need help. So Lee County is looking to see if possibly Florida Forever can help, to acquire additional land in the area, and that would be DEP essentially. So I know Lee County is looking at that. And then, as I mentioned, Conservation Collier has been actively working to acquire lands within Crew and other areas of Collier County. But for CWI, we've specifically tagged, Red Maple Swamp Preserve, just given the vicinity of that area to the project. And then there's a couple other key parcels that Conservation Collier is working on that we've sort of tagged as well. And those are a couple of individually owned parcels on the west side of Corkscrew Marsh. And so, those are on Conservation Collier's targeted protection mailing list. And so we're anticipating those land acquisition letters will go out next year. But land acquisition in general is facing some challenges. The funding for Conservation 2020, for example, this year is lower than it has been in some other years. And the county, I know, and Phil may have more updates, but Lee County is planning to host a workshop sometime next year, I believe, to talk about with the public the funding for Conservation 2020. And then, and then they have this tiered approach as well. And then with Conservation Collier, they had a change to their purchasing policy that was just approved, I think, last month at one of their commission meetings. And so for a good portion of this year, they weren't able to send out land acquisition letters because they were undergoing that policy change. So that kind of delayed some acquisitions, or at least letters, this year. So I just kind of wanted to highlight that, the team is working on it, and definitely land acquisition is an important goal, but, there are challenges. And then this is another exciting thing. I just wanted to mention, this is still very preliminary, high level. The CWI team, for now, it's been district staff and JTech, but we are looking at potentially installing some additional monitoring wells, groundwater monitoring wells in the southern and kind of southwest portion of the system. You can see that on the yellow circled area. There's kind of a lack of monitoring in this area to help us better understand not only surface water levels and where surface water is leaking out of the southern part of the system, but also groundwater flows. It would be helpful to have some additional monitoring stations to better understand how groundwater flow is leaving that system in the south end. So we've been kicking this idea around. We're looking at potentially installing some temporary additional monitoring wells in that area. But we need to further coordinate with not only district staff, but our technical working group to determine how many stations do we need, where do we need them, and just more of the details. But we're considering this kind of an early implementation type of scenario because if we can get funding and, get consensus on where these stations need to go, that's something we'd like to move forward with now because that data will be extremely useful as we move through the process. Okay, so Kuiper Preserve, this is one of the early implementation projects that we spoke about in April. And again, as I mentioned, this is a major project for Lee County. It covers over 3,000 acres. And this slide is really focused more on phase 1, which is here, this big blue rectangle here. So this is a major flood control and environmental restoration project by Lee County. It was identified in their regional Southern Lee County flood mitigation plan that came out after Irma. You know, the county did a major assessment after Hurricane Irma and looked at how they can improve flood control. So this was part of that analysis. And so Lee County was able to obtain funding, resiliency funding actually, for design, permitting, and construction. So they are moving forward with this. Like I said, they're finalizing their scope with their consultant. And this project aligns very well with the CWI objectives. You know, it's flood control, it's environmental restoration, it's helping to improve water supply and aquifer recharge. So we'll definitely have continued technical coordination between the projects, but we're excited that this project is moving forward, and I think it will be a big benefit to the region. This area is, at the confluence of a lot of different watersheds and water bodies. You've got the Estero River, the Imperial River, that are all in this area. So Lee County is anticipating that they will be able to commence the contract starting later this year. With construction, then they've got to go through final design and permitting, but they're expecting construction to commence in 2027, and that phase 1 will be complete by 2029. And this graphic shows there are 3 phases. So the last slide was more focused on phase 1, but this slide just kind of depicts the various phases of Kuiper Preserve. So while phase 1 is the biggest area, phase 2 is a cooperative agreement that Lee County has with the Bonita Grand Mine. So phase 2 is basically extending the berm to the south along that mine boundary, the developed boundary. So in all, it's about 16 miles of planned berm between the 3 phases. And again, this is to help provide flood control. There will be gated structures to help release the water, after major storm events and rains. It's just trying to hold some of that initial flood water back, but then release it when the downstream estuaries can handle it. And then at the same time, not inundating the wetlands, like trying to balance the flood control and the wetland restoration aspects. So similar to what the challenges that we have with CWI as well. So phase 1 and 2 are pretty much moving forward. Phase 2, I believe, is under construction with the Bonita Grand Mine. That mine is being converted to a residential development there in the city of Bonita Springs. So that's under construction. And then phase 3 is the southernmost segment. That's the long range phase of Kuiper Preserve. That's in kind of the planning stages. It's this blue area here. And that involves the berm extending down Bonita Grand Drive and then along Keel Canal. So that southernmost section is Keel Canal. And but that does rely on additional land acquisition because there's a lot of privately held parcels in Flint Penn Strand. So the county is looking at that. But there is a little bit of overlap between Kuiper Phase 3 and CWI. We have also a project along Keel Canal to help eliminate berm breaches, for example, that exist. That's just letting water drain too quickly off the landscape, and to install adjustable weirs. So we do have a little bit of overlap with Kuiper Phase 3, and the team is working through that. So next steps, this is really coming up next year. We're going to be modeling and evaluating our proposed alternatives. The final report is anticipated to be out at the end of next year. Our early implementation projects, which is this 3rd bullet, we've already been working on them. They're ongoing. I plan to give a final presentation to you in February of 27, but obviously I'll give updates next year throughout the year as well. And then, we'll move on to actually implementing the alternatives, getting funding for those alternatives. The final report will actually also include a funding memo because these are going to be big projects that are going to need a lot of funding. So JTEC plans to incorporate a funding memo in their final report to help, give options and ideas of how we can fund these projects. And Big Cypress Basin has a big project planned for Corkscrew 3. So the Corkscrew 3 structure, which is at the south end of the system along Shady Hollow Boulevard there, that structure has to be replaced. And so the modeling and the effort that we're doing with CWI will help inform how that structure gets replaced and how it should be designed and how it can be operated to help improve water levels in the system. So this will dovetail nicely. The end of the study will dovetail nicely with the Corkscrew 3, design as BCB moves forward with that. And here I just wanted to highlight that we've done a lot of public outreach, as I've mentioned. We recently updated the CWI flyer that's available on our public website now, and we also have copies outside on the table. So, we're planning to pass this out as much as we can, but we've added a lot more information on the ecosystem as well as the early implementation projects. I'm happy to speak to additional groups. If you hear of any groups that would like to hear about this, I'm happy to speak at those for those groups. And we also have more public meetings planned. So we have 2 more public meetings planned for CWI. One will be next fall, so possibly October, November timeframe. And that's where we want to present to the public, the results of our modeling and which of the alternatives that we think, we'd like to pursue for the final proposal. So we want to talk to the public about that and provide that information. So we just have a lot of work to do before then, a lot of modeling work to do. So that's why it's going to be later next year. And then once we get the final report together, the draft final report, we'll again go back to the public once we have our draft final report. So that would probably be January, February of 27. We'll have our final public meeting. And with that, I will take any questions.
Thank you, Laura, for the excellent presentation. We'll go ahead to the board questions. Vice Chair Smith?
Okay, mine might jump around a little bit. When you talked about the fish farm, is that not operational? Is that something that's just
I
has to
would
go away, or how do you handle that?
Good question. So Keith is here. Keith might be able to, I would love to learn more about the history, but apparently it's an old aquaculture site that's been there for decades, and it's on Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary's property. And apparently it used to be an area that they would grow fish for the wood storks.
Oh.
So it was meant to provide a foraging base for the wood storks, but I don't really know like how long it was in operation, or I don't know much about the history, but
Madam Chair, this is your registered public speaker.
He
All right,
can speak twice. First, fill in the history, Keith.
Okay,
Introduce
this is,
yourself.
the history's here interesting. This is one of those that seemed like a good idea at the time. Because the wood stork population had been dropping. So previous sanctuary directors decided they would build these fish farms so they could grow all these fish. Well, it turned out as soon as they opened them up, all the wood storks and egrets depleted them within days. So it didn't work out. And so now we have these species on the landscape, which are altering flow through that area. So those areas can be filled in and can be restored. But in the meantime, it can also serve as some deep water refugia to kind of work in some areas, kind of like some mini picayune restoration in there. So it's an interesting idea. It didn't quite work out, but it gives us an opportunity for some really great restoration.
Thank you, Keith,
Thank you.
for filling that in. Go ahead, Vice Chair Smith.
Thank you. And you talk about the 9 projects. I will go look online. I did not do that. Are they in priority of need, or what you think is most important to the least department?
well, in that technical document, they're just listed. But kind of to your point, that's where we've sort of combined them into alternatives. So once we had that list of projects, we've then combined them into alternatives. And in that mix of alternatives, we've tried to, prioritize and see which projects we think will help us meet our goals in what combination. But so that's kind of where we're at now. And then, we're finalizing that process using our matrix of which alternatives we're actually going to model. But they will be scored. So we have a whole series of metrics. And so all the projects, as they run through the modeling, that will tell us how those projects are doing, in terms of meeting our various objectives. And it's like a weighted score. So it's all going to be done basically mathematically.
So data will drive
Yeah.
that answer. Okay. excellent.
Exactly.
All right. My next one is, you had a section on project status, and it talked about future baseline conditions, future land use, future rainfall, future, I think you said maybe growth. How do you even go about addressing that or assessing it or even planning for that? I can guess, I love land use discussions, but how do you do it? What will drive this discussion?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And that's something we're literally working through right now. But we've decided, or we're tentatively, what we're thinking is having a 20-year planning horizon. So looking at 2020 to 2040. Again, I'll get final confirmation from everyone, but that's kind of what we're at now. And so we're looking at, the Lower West Coast Water Supply Plan, for example, the county comprehensive plans, their future land use maps. We're working right now with our district modeling team and Carolina Moran to figure out, what type of rainfall are we anticipating for that time frame? How do we incorporate future climate change and rainfall and things like that? But there's a lot of good information out there already from the counties, from the district. The Lower West Coast Water Supply Plan also has population estimates. So, we're just trying to combine all that information and plus information on future developments. We've amassed like a long list of permits in the area, especially the ones even that are conceptual, but there is a permit. So, we're looking at future developments, just trying to kind of incorporate all of that so that we're taking a comprehensive look.
So it all comes together. It sounds like something AI might be very interested in. I'm sorry. When Collier, or Conservation Collier and you target the same property for acquisition, how does that work out? Like,
Well, they were basically, they're already parcels that Conservation Collier is working on. They were just the smaller subset were just projects that we as the CWI team also identified as very important. So they're, regardless, even if CWI wasn't here, the county would still be working on those areas. But we just wanted to reach out to Conservation Collier and let them know that we know you're already working on these parcels, but our team has identified that these are important. So
which my point is, I think is
Yeah.
great. I think the collaboration, them, sharing the data is very important, I would think. And then sometimes I just sit here and think about how the public thinks about this data. And so this might seem like a really dumb question. So if you go to page 12 and we look at the restoration of I think it was the northeast, southwest flow. Some areas are too dry, some areas are too wet.
yes.
Can't believe I'm saying this out loud. Okay. So if I'm like, she knows, if I'm somebody from the public who doesn't understand this and doesn't see all this stuff. So some are too wet, some are too dry. Why is some too dry? Why are some so wet? Is it just because there's just, there's no flow? I get that, why it would be too dry. There's no natural flow, but
Right. It's nuanced. It's basically just characteristics on the ground, sort of infrastructure on the ground, topography, ditches. There's different things that influence the hydrology in different areas, basically.
elevation, whatever's going on there.
Elevation.
Okay. I assumed that, but I was like, maybe there's something else at play here. But otherwise, I love that you're working with Lee County because it is a regional, it should be a regional plan. And do you go to their meetings? Do they come to our meetings? Do you meet up at convention?
Well, I mean, they're part of our technical working group, and so we meet quarterly.
Okay.
But then we, of course, have a lot of additional coordination in between. We've had several meetings with Lee County to talk about Kiker Preserve and land acquisition. So we meet regularly.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's great. Great presentation. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member McLeod?
Yes. Thank you, Laura.
You're welcome.
I think it was slide number 8 where you talk about this stakeholder meetings.
Yes.
And just out of curiosity, do you remember what specific input some of these stakeholders have offered in this initiative? Like, what is Baron Collier saying? What is the Port Authority saying?
Right.
I
Well,
know this is a tough question to try to remember, back to those specific meetings, but anything specific, it's just out of curiosity, like what are they contributing to this conversation?
no, that's a great question. So basically, they've provided a lot of information on hydrologic issues that they're seeing in the watershed or that they're facing. Part of it was to introduce them to CWI. But yeah, for example, Lee County Port Authority, when we met with them, we didn't realize that they were having those hydrologic issues where they have water for too long on their landscape. They're a huge mitigation area. So that's something we learned, from talking to them. Several of these entities have offered to share their monitoring well data. And just also letting us know what future plans they have. What are they planning in the future that either CWI could affect or that could affect CWI? So part of it's just, just coordinating on what we're all doing so that we're aware of what's going on in the watershed. And it's been very helpful.
Good.
Yeah.
Right. Yes, collaboration is so important. Thank you again.
Sure.
Andy?
Just a comment, and then I'll get into a question that leads up to it. I think that most of the people in this room, I think, can capture the magnitude of importance that Corkscrew plays in our community. However, I'm not too sure that outside of this room that it's fully people are fully aware of the impact it has on their daily lives. So I was just wondering if there's any opportunities where you can, through public relations, presentation, advertisements at the airport, which we just heard is part of your constituents. So with that, that's one thing. And then the other thing, I know there's various development threats to the Corkscrew area, and I wanted to get your opinion as to what would be the most significant ones that pop up that are a threat to Corkscrew now.
Well, to your first point, that's a great point, and we certainly can work with the Port Authority, but I know we've got Crew Land and Water Trust here too, which we rely very heavily on them. They do such a great job being ambassadors for Crew in the whole community. So, I want to give a shout out to Crew Trust because they do that every day. That's like their bread and butter is trying to educate the community about Crew and its importance. But you're right, we certainly should look at other opportunities to get the word out about the importance of this natural resource that we have in our backyard. I guess with regard to the developments, I have a prior regulatory background, so I think that we're lucky in this regard. Certainly development in general has impacts, but I know that our regulatory team at the district works very hard to ensure the rules are met, that projects meet criteria. And essentially this list that I'm on this slide, show these are the major developers that are in our area that's surrounding Crew. And I think they've all done a really good job trying to build communities that take into account the sensitivity of the area. So, that's another reason we're coordinating with them but, a lot of these developments are already in, for example, along Corkscrew Road. So, there's Camerata has Kingston. I know that project is controversial. That is on the north side of the sanctuary. And then Alico, I have Alico on here. They have a new planned development that's undergoing permitting right now with the district. That's on the north side of Crew Marsh. And that's a huge, I think it's 5,000 acre development or roughly. But, we're working with Alico. They've wanted to work with us to make sure that they have buffers and, are trying to make sure that whatever they do with their development will not impact CWI and will help the ecosystem. So, there's not a lot of land left. Pretty much surrounding the Crew area, most of it's developed. Certainly there's additional single family homes that are coming in, right, on some of the single family areas. But I would say the biggest developments are on the north side. And so those are being looked at and,
Okay, and I know Alico is a representative of a lot of former agriculture properties which are now converting their land from growing orange trees to development, and that poses a significant risk to the area.
Yeah, and of course, they're still going through permitting, but Alico does have a huge proposed on the eastern side of their project. They've worked with the wildlife agencies and they have a panther sort of preservation area on the whole eastern side that is planned to connect to additional wildlife crossings under State Road 82.
But it sounds like it's like what they're doing is it's a net negative. They're just trying to mitigate the loss to wildlife and to the ecosystem to some extent. but they look like they're moving forward with projects that are going to be a net negative to Corkscrew at the end of the day.
Yeah, I'll leave it to the regulatory agencies to, to chime in. But yes, it is. I mean, it is development that is happening, certainly around the system.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Board Member Leonard?
Hi, thanks so much for your presentation. I'm just curious, when you finalize your project list and prioritize it, will funding sources be evaluated at the same time and prioritized? So the likelihood of those projects actually coming on board?
Yeah, so at the end of the process, we'll identify the restoration projects that meet the objectives, of the project, based on all the modeling. And then JTech will have a funding memo that identifies potential funding opportunities. But we will have to find ways to fund the projects. So I don't know that we would have funding lined up before then. But
No, I don't mean
Yeah.
before then. I meant
Right.
more that how likely some of these areas, because this is a partnership, right? The projects will be partnerships. And funding will vary depending on the entity, right? In the
Right.
area where they are.
right.
So I guess that's what I was thinking. Will there be some sort of analysis of the likelihood of funding coming online, or I don't know. Depends on what your projects are. It's hard for me to sort of pinpoint.
No, that's a great question. So, I mean, you're right, because the various projects would be implemented by the various agencies, right? And we'll figure out who's going to do which projects. I don't know if the memo would address the likelihood of funding. We can look at that, but I know it would just give potential opportunities for funding.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
We'll go to public speakers.
Yes, Madam Chair, Keith Lockinen is registered as a public speaker, and he is the only speaker I have registered for this item. And
Thank you.
Keith, I hope I got close on the last name.
Very close. Lockinen. Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and board members. Congratulations, Michelle Leonard. We are welcome you to the board, and we are so grateful of all the work you've done on conservation land with Collier County. As the chair of that committee, you've been a real star, and you've been fantastic. So thank you so much for all your work. I just want to again thank the Big Cypress Basin and all the partners for working together. Laura's done a really good job. She's done a fantastic job of herding cats to make sure we're all coming together, because there's a lot of different interests on there. But also, again, I want to thank the leadership of Ms. Roman. You have truly been a political champion for this, and this project is moving forward because of you. So we continue to be so grateful for you being a partner for all of us in this watershed and this work. Just want to amplify a few things Laura said. Because of the rate of development, you cannot underscore how important land acquisition is. And I think I've been saying for 20 years, we have to buy it now or it's going to be developed. Well, now is the time. And this 100-acre piece, this Corkscrew Tree LLC, is very important. We also have very critical Florida Forever projects in the Crew headwaters, which need to be acquired, as well as Flint Penn Strand. So it's really critical that we get those acquired and get those towards this project. We also are really supportive of sort of no regrets options. You mentioned fish farm restoration. Hopefully that's going to be one. There still needs to be some modeling done on it, but I think it would be a great benefit for the overall system. It's just a really great opportunity, and I was really happy to see this nice one pager. This is fantastic, and this really provides a lot of direction to the public. And I just kind of want to follow up on how important this work is because of the hydrology impacts that have been happening, not only in the sanctuary, but in the watershed. Speaking with Dr. Clem this week, our Director of Conservation, and we now have 70 years of hydrologic data. This is our 10th lowest peak ever. And so it's been kind of a crazy rainy season. It felt like it was normal, but it really wasn't. Our rainfall was much lower than normal, and the recession has already started, and it's looking to be a dry winter. So you cannot underscore enough how much keeping that water in the system is important, because every time this whole place goes dry, you have to reset the entire ecosystem. You have to grow everything from scratch, and it's very hard for ecosystems to adapt to these rapid changes. So the work that's being done here is going to benefit not only wildlife, but it's also going to benefit the community. I live in Golden Gate Estates. I know where I get my groundwater from, and also reducing the risk of wildfires. So this is a great project, and we're just so grateful for you. So thank you.
Thank you, Keith.
Chair, may I ask a question of Keith?
Sure, go ahead.
Keith, Laura had mentioned in her presentation that at some point Audubon was managing this particular parcel of land. I guess something happened where then that project sunsetted and the management of that land was no longer being managed or not being managed. Do you have any background information on that? What happened there?
I believe Laura can probably give the best background on that, but it had been kind of limbo for a while because I think it was Corkscrew, and then it may have just kind of not been us for a while, but it ended up being an orphan, and we're grateful for the district for picking that up and taking on management of that.
And is there any other foreseeable areas that may potentially undergo that same issue that we should be keeping an eye out on?
I think we've done a pretty good job of identifying those properties, which could be that, type of management. But I think the key is that, whatever is acquired needs to go into active management, active restoration, opening these places up for, pathways for wildlife and for water storage and for wetland restoration. So
Okay.
I know you've done a great job at watching the ball on that. So thank you, Laura.
Okay, good.
Okay,
Thank you, Keith.
Thanks.
good. Thank you, Keith. Thank you for being here. We have a tremendous amount of expertise on this board. And we have different backgrounds and different experiences that all, I think, really contribute to us being successful in moving this initiative forward. And under Laura's leadership on the staff, first of all, tremendous presentation today. I think you sent a clear picture on where we're headed, but there's so many partners and particularly the landowners who may be looking for an opportunity to join in, okay? And we could be creative, right? It doesn't have to be as Laura briefed today, fee simple alone, right? We can work up some creative ways if it lends itself to that opportunity. This update to the one pager is really, really critical for how we're going to take the message forward to folks that we talk to, or invite Laura and her team to come and speak to one of your groups that you're a part of. I know there's a lot of groups looking for guest speakers. She would be happy to do it, and she can tailor it to whatever your audience needs. And you can take these handouts with you and look at the technical working group participants. This is amazing. It's right here in this little blue square here on the actual one pager. And that's amazing that this group has come together and is making so much progress in providing this ecosystem restoration. Thank you for your leadership on this, Laura.
You're welcome.
And the understanding, at your point, Michelle, you're understanding the importance of Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary, and I think Andy mentioned it too. I mean, how important it is to our region. So this is where the expertise on this board and the dedication and professionalism of this board can take this message forward with the staff. So I would offer you to take a look at those opportunities and to get with Laura if you're so inclined, and actually find out more and see what you can do, or what message or whatever we can do to help advance this. And Laura, I appreciate the fact that you raised the point that we're doing stuff now. We're not waiting around, but at the same time, we're being cautious and being responsible for where, if there is a project that we're not quite sure of, we're waiting until the modeling. And we're taking that extra time to make sure that we're doing the right thing and not causing another problem somewhere else. So I think that was an important point that you brought up. I want to thank the technical working group members, because I attended the first kickoff of the technical working group a year and a half ago. And I remember all those members around that table, and I was wondering how that was all going to come together. but I can't thank the members enough. And we've got some here, Bob Lucius representing crew here, along with your folks that are going to present next. We've got Lee County, thank you so much. Audubon certainly has been a part of this. And Georgia, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention JTech and your partnership on this project. So I'm very encouraged by where we are. I'm very encouraged by the public's participation in the public forums that we've had so far. It's a hard thing to wrap your head around, to understand. And you come away and you say, well, what could I do? How do I fit in? Well, that's why you pick up the phone or email Laura, and Laura will help you if you're having that cocktail and you came across somebody who may have a parcel of land that might want to contribute in a partnership way to advancing this project. So I would leave you with that. Thank you, Laura. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Roman. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, that brings us to the Big Cypress Basin Capital Plan update with Lucine Dadrian. Glad to have you here, Lucine.
Thank you. Glad to be back. I know I was here back in April presenting what your 5-year capital plan would be. And today I'm going to provide an update on our current fiscal year 2025, 2026, our capital plan adjustments as we move forward. Any plan that we move forward with always has tweaks and adjustments as we move our schedules forward. So we've been in design for the I-75 Canal Weir number 2 project, and this is to replace this structure. We're currently under construction for the demolition of the, do you see the mouse? Okay. So we're currently under demolition of the I-75 Weir 1. That's under construction, so we're making headway there. But in the process, we are also designing the replacement of an older structure here. This is the existing, and the new design is further south. We are a little bit delayed on that design, and we want to make sure we get that design right before we move to construction. So our adopted budget was 3.8 million, and we're looking at a ready to advertise in the second quarter of FY26. So that's in that March timeframe. Then we go out to bid, and then to governing board for approval, and that's in Q3. So what does that do for us? That gives us some excess funds this year that we'll definitely not be spending. So we decided, why not take that additional funding that we have available and move forward a few designs so that we don't lose time and we have more designs moving forward and in the hopper so that we can be in construction in the out years. So that is this project. This is a 600 CFS structure. It's going to be a concrete 3-box barrel remotely operated structure, similar to Cypress, the structure that was recently built. So what we're moving forward with are some designs for canal improvements. And if you remember back in the day, we did the level of service modeling effort, and it came up with a few areas that we wanted to assess. And so the 2 areas prioritized from that level of service effort to move forward on are the I-75 Canal and Faki Union. And specifically for I-75, we're looking at between Weir 3 and Weir 2, between Vanderbilt Beach Road and Pine Ridge Road. We have survey for this area, and this effort will kickstart the design to figure out what that canal cross-section looks like, the canal bank stabilization, et cetera, and moving forward, so dredging and canal bank stabilization, with a planned construction start in FY28. And then Faki Union, we're looking at from between Faki Union 5 structure and 4 South. We still need to start survey. So survey takes time, then we'll do geotech, and then we'll move into prioritizing work based on that information from the survey to see what areas need work, and we'll hopefully do some improvements, dredging and bank stabilization as necessary. So we are moving approximately 900,000 from that I-75 number 2 budget over to this canal improvements line item. So when I presented the 5-year capital plan, it's a suite of projects that you approved to move forward with. And so within that, we've stayed within the total dollar value for the fiscal year. But you've approved projects, and so we know that you want us to move on these projects as much as possible. So the other one that we're moving forward with is the Upper Fawkey Union modifications. This includes modeling of this watershed and to determine if we can, number one, remove this middle structure here, Fawkey Union 6. So similar to I-75 Weir 1, we determined we could remove that structure out of the canal system. And what is, number one, you did not need it. Number two, we did not need to spend the money on a replacement structure, and we do not need to spend money on the future O&M of that structure. And it helps with staff time in the field with your full-time employees. So that is part of the evaluation, is if we can remove Fawkey Union 6. The other part of the evaluation is Fawkey Union 5 here. We would like to, it has 12 gates. It has 2.5 feet of head loss across the structure because the gates are so small. They capture debris, they capture vegetation, and then each gate frame actually helps to create that additional head loss. So if we've done some major improvements to the structure in regards to remote operations, we've done a lot of improvements, but this next step is really evaluating what we can adjust the structure to get better efficiency and flow through the structure. So that's part of the analysis. And then in addition, the future would be with that modeling to determine where Fawkey Union 7 would go. So if you're taking out 6, does 7, go south? Where's that sweet spot in that location to move the structure? So we have some existing FY25 money, and we're adding 200,000 from FY26 from that I-75 number 2 line. So, and then with that, this very short presentation. So as you can see, you're adopted versus revised. But I also wanted to provide an update on the boardwalk, the Crew Bird Rookery Swamp Boardwalk. This is in design. It's coming in for a design review shortly. And also we're looking at some composite decking. So I kind of brought an example of what that looks like. And what the composite decking is going to help us with is it's not going to be as hot to walk on. It's going to not contract and expand as much as wood would. And it's stronger than wood. So this is, if you want to see what this material is, we can pass this around. And then everything else is moving as planned within your budget. The Gordon River and Palm River structures are still in design. And with that, I will take any questions that you have.
Thank you, Lucenay. Board questions? Vice Chair Smith?
What's, what's the life of this? Sorry.
The length?
Life.
Life.
How
Oh,
long is left?
lifespan.
Yeah,
So they've said it's a 100-year lifespan.
awesome.
You're welcome.
Got to be around to know that it lasted that
Yeah, I
long.
want to see it. No, exactly. It's awesome. It feels just like.
Thank you. Any other questions for Lucenay? Any public comment? Great.
Madam
Copy?
Chair?
Yes,
Hi.
that's right. You have a comment.
I do have a comment. So if you remember, when we adopted our 26 budget with the original plans, one of the things I had mentioned is that we would be submitting this to the Board of County Commissioners for their approval, which is part of what we have to do through our cooperative agreement with Collier County. So part of why Lucenay was here today is because we didn't want you to have one capital plan that you had seen and then we submit something else to the Board of County Commissioners, right? So now that we have a new plan moving forward in 26, we will put that on the November agenda for the Board of County Commissioners for their final approval of our capital plan moving forward.
Thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Lucenay.
Thank you.
All right, next item is the Crew Native Orchid Restoration Project update. Robin Cerny, nice to have you today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. My name is Robin Cerny, and I am the Trail Operations Coordinator for Crew Trust, and I am so happy to be here today. Thank you for the opportunity. I'll give you just a couple slides about Crew Trust in case there is some public that is not familiar with us. We are a nonprofit, and our mission is the preservation and stewardship of the water resources and natural communities around Crew, which it seems like you all are familiar with. We do have 4 Crew trail systems. We have the Marsh Trails and Cypress Dome Trails to the north, and then Flint Pen Strand off of Bonita Beach Road and Crew Bird Rookery Swamp off of Immokalee Road. And a little bit about Crew Trust and what we do. A lot of what we do now is education and facilitating public use. So we do have over 40 miles of trails that we maintain, and that's most of what my job is maintaining the trails. We have over 100,000 visitors a year combined to all of these trail systems, which is amazing. And we also have 3 campsites that we maintain, and those are free to book through the district's website. And last year we had over 5,000 volunteer hours. A lot of those volunteers are leading guided hikes, getting the public out on the trails. A lot of it is Trail Work Tuesday volunteers, maintaining the trails, and then also education volunteers. And our education team here last year reached over 5,500 students with programs on the trails. And that is K through 12 and college students that we get out on the trails, which is amazing. And we had about 800 adult program attendees. And those are things like our guided hikes, our strolling science seminars, and our in-town lectures, all those kinds of things. So really just getting a lot of people out on this land to appreciate it is a big part of our mission. So now I'll move on to the Orchid project. This was a grant-funded project. I was able to get matching grant funding from a couple of different organizations. So our local Audubon of Southwest Florida chapter applied for funds on behalf of Crew to the Audubon Florida Plants for Birds grant, which we received. And then the Naples Garden Club matched that grant. So without them, this project would not have happened. So we're very thankful to them. Some of the project goals for this project, I will say that I was duplicating a previously successful project that I was fortunate enough to take part of. And I was also able to go out with the follow-up monitoring of that project and kind of learn from the lessons that we saw, in the season after that project was implemented. Of course, our main goal was to restore native orchids to the swamp. We all know that native orchids are at risk of being lost. And I really felt like Crew was really well positioned to have this project because of our position kind of north of the Everglades. And also, like it was said, we are the largest intact watershed in Southwest Florida. Another one of my goals was to make more connections in the environmental community for future collaboration and restoration projects. So I invited people from other organizations to come help me with this project in the hopes that I would then be able to help them with other projects that they need help on restoring their pieces of land. And then I also wanted to create more environmental education opportunities on the trails. So we did put some of the orchids on our education trails so that the public can enjoy them and the education team can use them in future education walks and things as they see appropriate. So for the rest of my slides, I'm just going to kind of have you all come along with me and see the work that we did that week. This is some of the orchids that we got hanging out at the field station before we planted them. And I will say I am not an orchid expert and I know when to ask for help. So I brought in this gentleman who's in the middle of the picture. This is Rich Ackerman, and he is an orchid expert. He owns Broward Native Orchids. He's also affiliated with the Million Orchid Project and the Fairchild Tropical Botanic Gardens over on the East Coast. And I, talked to him throughout planning this project, and then he came over for the week of the project. So in this photo, we are scouting out some of our sites that I had kind of pre-selected, and I took him out there to see if he thought these were suitable sites. You can see we've got some pink flagging, or we're kind of divvying up, maybe we can put 40 of something here and 20 of something over there. And then we have a spreadsheet going where we're dividing everything up so that we're nice and organized for the project. After we scouted our sites, we hosted a lecture, and Rich Ackerman talked about native orchids, their history, conservation threats, restoration efforts, and then we dove into the species that we were actually going to plant and did a little demo in the classroom of how we're going to plant them. We had 23 attendees to this lecture, and this project was by invitation only. I wanted to invite crew volunteers and people from local conservation organization and land management partners so that we had good collaboration and a lot of people in the room, but I didn't want it to be advertised to the public. So that was how I handled attendance to this event. So for day one of planting, we had 19 attendees and we planted 195 orchids that first day. And you can see here, Rich Ackerman is doing a demonstration of our planting technique. So what we did was we brought the trays of orchids out into the swamp and we cleaned all of the like potting soil and medium off of them into 5-gallon buckets that we then removed. So we then spread the roots of the orchids out on the side of a tree and then covered that with cocoa fiber. And then we wrapped that really tightly with a natural twine. So that way we were hoping to create a little microclimate that would allow the orchid to hold some moisture in there and attach to the tree. But then after a few months, all of those natural materials will decompose and rot away, and we'll be left with just the orchid and no other, kind of traces of the project. Another lesson that we learned from the previous project that I took part in was to plant the orchids in small groups. So you can see in this picture, we're planting 4 or 5 orchids on this one bent over tree. And the purpose of that is to make it easier, in part for me when I am doing the follow-up monitoring, but also for pollinators so that whether it's a pollinating bug or me trying to find them, I know I've got 5 right here instead of 1 over there and 1 over here that I have to go on a treasure hunt to go find them for follow-up monitoring. For day 2 of planting, we had 13 attendees and we planted 131 orchids. This picture shows Rick Bauer, who is our new crew senior scientist. He had just started a week or 2 before this project started, and I am so grateful that he was there for it. He brought a ton of expertise to this project, and he was there the whole way through. Super, super helpful having him out there. He was really awesome. And then here is our happy group of planters from day 2. Really awesome group of people from a lot of different organizations. And then for day 3 of planting, I did a special edition of our Trail Work Tuesday. So our Trail Work Tuesday volunteers are the people who maintain that 40+ miles of trails. They work so incredibly hard. They work all summer, all wet season. And then of course I get triple the amount of people during snowbird season. But they are mowing and weed whacking and installing benches and marking trails and doing all of the hard work. So I really wanted to give them a special opportunity to take part in this project. So I had 7 attendees for the Trail Work Tuesday, which is actually a lot of people considering this was July. So all the snowbirds were gone. This is just like my hardcore group of regulars. And then we planted the last 54 orchids that day. This was really challenging field work, as you can imagine. We did take ladders all the way out into the swamp, miles off trail. And the ladders were mostly used in the places where we were planting orchids on the trails, where I wanted them to be publicly accessible for the education team and just for people hiking. I wanted to put them on the trail, but not at hand-reaching level, just because they are such a sensitive plant and topic. So yeah, we did carry a lot of ladders out there in the swamp that week. And I did get to plant a few orchids. Mostly that whole week, I was just running around with my phone, capturing GPS data, trying to collect, every single thing that we planted out there with, precise data. But every once in a while, somebody would take my phone away so that I could plant an orchid. And I'm really glad they did because it was a really amazing experience. Some of the project metrics, we planted 380 native orchids in all. We had 12 different species. We did 4 days of scouting locations and then 3 days of planting. I had 24 participants from about 10 different local environmental conservation organizations, and it was about 350 volunteer hours that we logged for the project. Some of my monitoring plans, I've been monitoring all the orchids that are accessible during wet season. And I'd say we're probably at about an 85% success rate so far, which is pretty good. Some of the orchids, a lot of them that we planted were teeny tiny, just like 2 blades of grass, you know? And we did have, like Keith said, a pretty weird wet season where there were definitely weeks at a time where we did not get rain in some locations. So I was pretty nervous about them. But I think they're doing pretty good so far. And then I will do a lot more monitoring during dry season. I hope to get out there at least once in the early dry season, as soon as things dry down enough for me to get out there to our more remote sites. And then another follow-up, more importantly, at the end of dry season to see what made it through this, what looks like it's going to be a long dry season. So I will have more later on that. And then future plans for the project, more monitoring, like I said. I think there's going to be a lot of lessons to learn about what worked and what didn't, you know, what species were successful, which ones weren't, which ecosystems were successful. There's going to be things that we learned that we never could have imagined. You know, one of the things we learned from the last project was that if you put an orchid somewhere that a squirrel uses as a squirrel runway, they will tear that thing off of there. So never could have imagined we were going to learn that. I would love to repeat this project if I was able to get funding. When I first got 380 orchids handed to me, I thought, oh my goodness, where am I going to put all these? And then as soon as I got out to the first site, I was like, oh, I could put all of these at this one site. So, you know, it's an infinite amount of orchids that we could put out there if we decided that was appropriate. And then, of course, I would like to collaborate with some of the neighboring properties, the people who helped me with my project. I'd love to go help them with an orchid project or a different kind of restoration project and just keep building that environmental conservation community where we can help each other out. Any questions?
Thank you, Robin. I had a question. Maybe I missed it at the beginning of your presentation. What was the source of the seedlings that you had to put out in the swamp?
They came from Rich Ackerman at Broward Native Orchids. Yep.
Broward Native Orchids. Thank you very much. Okay, we've got a lot of board questions here. Michelle McLeod.
So I love orchids, and if I could, I would have them in every single room of my house. And so I started Googling it, like, what are the benefits of orchids? And in a home, it was talking about air purification, health benefits, medicinal benefits. It can control your mood with just how beautiful they are. And then it made me wonder, well, what is the significance that it has in the wild? And why are we doing this?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, orchids they're important to some pollinators, you know, mostly insects that pollinate them. I think they're also just an important part of just maintaining our biodiversity as a whole and not losing that biodiversity as, you know, invasive species moves in and, you know, things like that. So, yeah, and I think also really an educational opportunity, a talking point for the education team, all the ones that we put on the trails. And you never know what's going to spark somebody's interest when they're on the trail. You know, they could see an orchid and just have their mind blown by it,
Right.
and then just deep dive into that, and then
Yeah.
they care about the watershed, and that's what we're going for.
Right, yeah, that's
Yeah.
really cool. I love that. I love
Yeah.
this project. Thank you.
Vice Chair Smith.
I love orchids too. And my HOA is going to love that I'm going to do a DIY project. Do I water it after I put it on the?
If you can.
Okay, I will be trying that.
Yeah.
So I'm a real estate broker, and we talk about orchids being very something that's very interesting in our area, and there's an orchid society. It takes a lot to get into it. Is that something where you work with them at all and communicating what you're doing? Because it's kind of cool. I mean, that you're spreading the love and the awareness.
Yeah, I would love to work with them. I worked with the Naples Garden Club that was one of our funders, and I am leading a hike for them next week to kind of show them and talk to them about everything. I didn't work with the Orchid Society, but I would love to in the future. That'd be super cool. I think they have a lot of expertise.
And then don't you have the elusive ghost orchid?
I don't know. I know Keith Blackenden has one, maybe.
I was wondering if you,
I would love to find one out there. That'd be
that's
awesome.
one. Okay. And then do you do any, okay, this is just another one of those, she's gonna look at me like I'm crazy. Do you ever do any Halloween, like walk in the swamp in the Halloween time.
That would be
To bring
awesome.
people out there.
Yeah,
I
we
mean, I
do.
would go. I would go.
Yeah, we do nighttime events, especially for our members, where we have people come out and do like bat monitoring or bug watch, where we set up black lights and sheets and like see what bugs we can find, and we do sunset hikes and things like that. So we do have some really cool events out at nighttime on the trails.
Excellent. idea.
Michelle and I would like to help you in next Halloween.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Great presentation.
Any other questions from the board? How about public comment, Troy?
I have no slips and no hands raised on Zoom.
Great, thank you. Robin, I saw the educational flyer that you put out, and it had a lot of great programs that you're offering the public. Do you post that also to social media? I wasn't able to find it for some reason, but you do post it, so I'll look
Oh, yes.
again.
Yes.
Okay, because I was looking for something that was more shareable than the flyer was.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you. If I can't find it, I'll reach out to you. Thank you so much for being here today and presenting to us. Thank you. Okay, we now are going to hear from Cindy Woolley from Keep Collier Beautiful, and she's on Zoom. Troy?
Your slides are up, Cindy. We should be ready for you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Troy. Good morning, Madam Chair and board members. Thank you so much for inviting Keep Collier Beautiful to present today. For the record, my name is Cindy Woolley. I am the owner of C2 Communications, and my firm was contracted in 2021 to manage the administration and volunteer projects for Keep Collier Beautiful, effectively serving as the executive director of the organization. Now, just for history and context purposes, Keep Collier Beautiful and the South Florida Water Management District have worked together in years past. Unfortunately, our collaboration on the Adopt a Canal program was interrupted by the toll that COVID and Hurricane Ian took on Keep Collier Beautiful. I'm excited to share that we're working to rekindle the collaboration and get volunteers out to the canals during our community-wide cleanup projects. And today I'd like to give you a brief background on Keep Collier Beautiful, our annual results and initiatives looking ahead. Next slide, please. Keep Collier Beautiful is a registered affiliate of Keep America Beautiful. And throughout the country, affiliates are organized in different ways. Some are part of the government, some have a hybrid government nonprofit structure with governing bodies, and then some are standalone as independent 501c3 nonprofit organizations. Here in Collier County, we are governed as an independent 501c3 nonprofit organization led by our board members, Larry Berg, the local head of waste management. Bill Jones and Jimmy Neves are with Waste Pro waste haulers in Immokalee, and Shane Shaddis, a private local waste hauler. But of course, we collaborate closely with local government officials. Essentially, with our mission, just one second, Troy. Our mission is essentially to be an umbrella organization bringing together local governments, businesses, civic and trade associations to help protect the local environment. And that takes on litter reduction, improving recycling, and anything that is out there to help beautify and protect our environment. Next slide, please. So how do we accomplish our mission? That is, that's something that's unique to our area as well. In order to stay a member in good standing with Keep America Beautiful, all affiliates must conduct one litter index survey per year and participate in 2 community-wide cleanups, the Great American Cleanup and the International Coastal Cleanup. Additional programs are encouraged, but of course, they're customized to the local communities. We've always had a robust volunteer base here in Collier County, but our organization was damaged significantly during COVID. And then, over the past few years, we've been working to restore our volunteer base and rebuild relationships within the community. As we've been working towards that, we've been including the canal systems in our marketing, but they're not always quite as sexy as the beaches. This year, though, I'm really proud and excited to say that we're expanding those efforts, and we've been generating volunteer groups that have gone out and had a significant impact on the basin and on the canal network. Our volunteers are returning in a very strong way. So we have expanded our cleanups. New in 2025 is the Marco Island Area Association of Realtors Waterway Cleanup. So we'll be adding a whole nother community-wide cleanup in July in partnership with Marco Island Realtors. We also have the Keep Collier Beautiful Art Contest, which is in partnership with Collier County Solid Waste. One of the education coordinators, Dana Algier, visits literally every public and private school in Collier County, distributes information about Keep Collier Beautiful and this art contest to try and engage children in caring about the environment through art and engagement that way. Our future programs, of course, bringing more attention to our canals, working with FDOT, and just expanding our initiatives to clean up litter and debris in the community. Next slide, please. And how are we funded? Of course, as a nonprofit, we are funded through grants and sponsorships. This is a public-private partnership of sorts because we've got state funding, we've got Collier County funding, foundations. Walmart has been a significant funder this year, and we've had probably close to 100 volunteers exclusively from the different Walmart stores here in Collier County. Waste Management, Waste Pro, and Cascade and Waste Equip all supply waste services, waste hauling services locally, and they're really invested in protecting the environment as well. Next slide, please. All right, so our impact locally, this is our fiscal year 2025 numbers, and that includes 2,642 volunteers. That's the groups that have participated in the Great American Cleanup, the International Coastal Cleanup, and then we have a variety of small cleanups where groups want to take 5 people out or 10 people out to do smaller projects throughout the year. This year we were actually contacted by Publix and Walmart to be able to do special projects in April. And so those different cleanup projects were just here to help facilitate and connect people and get the resources they need to be able to handle those cleanups. And we have well over 1,000 trash bags filled during these cleanups, an estimated 8,272 pounds of trash collected. And that averages out to, during our cleanups, it's an average of 3.13 pounds of waste collected per volunteer. Oh. Next slide, please. So now time for some of the fun stuff, the pictures and the impact and the faces, because you don't really understand quite the impact until you are one of the volunteers out on these community cleanups. This is Naples Classical Academy, and they are at the 951 Canal. And this was in March of 2025. So this group of kids and just volunteers from the academy came out and collected waste and litter and debris around the canals right there on 951. Next slide, please. We do have longstanding relationships with student volunteers. The photos on the left are from North Naples Middle School. That's led by Brad Preston, who's been bringing students from North Naples Middle School for at least 15 years out for Keep Collier Beautiful cleanups. And we see that a lot of teachers use the cleanup projects as environmental learning lessons and literally hands-on teaching opportunities for their students, and they take those lessons back into the classroom. Now, over on the right-hand side of the screen, you will see Haldeman Creek, and that cleanup is led in March and September every year by Shirley Garcia with the Collier County Bayshore Gateway Triangle CRA. And that group, they take by land, by sea, and fill up quite possibly the largest garbage cans and find the most unique holes on a year-to-year basis. Very dedicated. Next group, please. And while some people think of coastal cleanup, meaning, hey, isn't that at the beach? Are we not going to the beach? We take the opportunity to really share how interconnected the waterways are and just how far litter can travel before it even gets to the ocean. So we do have regular partnerships with the Rookery Bay National Estuary. Also, we've got regular friends of relationships with Friends of Tiger Tail Beach, Friends of Delmer Wiggins, Friends of Barefoot Beach, and partner with those organizations as well. Next slide, please. This group here, I brought this out because the Naples Pier was captained by Collier County Road and Bridge. I just love that some of the county staff and county employees are out and volunteering. They're not required to do this, and this is not a paid position, but a team from Road and Bridge does come out and they site captain whichever location we send them to, and they're fantastic volunteers. And then on the bottom right-hand corner, you can see Michael Sippos, who is with the Florida Sea Grant Advisory. He often leads some of our larger groups like FGCU, really getting down into the weeds and getting all the litter and debris out. That is at the Jolly Bridge. Next slide, please. Vanderbilt Beach. This is Vanderbilt Beach, and I bring this up too because you might recognize the face in the middle. That's Carrie Hodgson, director with Collier County Solid and Hazardous Waste. And they're definitely deep partners in everything that we do with Keep Collier Beautiful. And because of their support and working together, we've seen a 76% increase in the Great American Cleanup volunteers from last year to this year. So in 2024, we had 514 volunteers in March. In this year, we had 908 registrations. That also led to an 82% increase in trash bags filled and waste collected this year. Next slide, please. So this past September 20th, we were excited. We partnered with the South Florida Water Management District to identify potential cleanup sites. And we invited partner groups and organizations to captain those locations. And so we'll be able to show you some specific pictures and some stats from these locations. Out of our 20 cleanup sites across Collier County, which literally does range from South Beach and Marco Island up north to Lake Trafford and then up to Barefoot Beach. We're spreading the width of Collier County when we deploy our volunteer base. But we did have cleanups at the 951 Canal, Airport Road Canal North, that's near Naples Boulevard, and then Airport Road Canal South, that's just south of Airport and Pine Ridge Road, which is an area of regular litter and debris that we try to address, as well as the students from Florida Southwestern at Henderson Creek. Two of our previous groups who have repeatedly been at canals were not able to join us during this particular cleanup, but we are working to find a way to bring them back. Next slide, please. All right, so by the numbers, breaking down what we were able to accomplish at these 4 sites. At the 951 Canal, we had 25 trash bags filled with an estimated weight of trash around 30 pounds. Airport Road, that was St. John Newman's Key Club. Now, this group has been going out to this particular location since 2021, and just a very dedicated group of volunteers and high school students. It's always so nice to see them participate. So you can see that about 340 bags or 340 pounds of litter and debris collected on this cleanup mission. Next slide, please. I always get asked what are the most unusual items that we find along the way. And this is not representative of just the canals. This is the broader cleanup efforts that we do take part in. And so from the International Coastal Cleanup in September, we did find 5 quarts of oil, used oil with the jugs in one of the swales that we were able to collect. Often find furniture, toys, construction debris. And I had a site captain text me on Saturday and say, "Oh, look at the knife we found." You know, hopefully that was from a charcuterie board on the beach. But, you know, some of these items can be not just dangerous for the environment, but dangerous for the people that are visiting and getting outdoors. We're also seeing, you know, just a real solid base with our volunteer students in Immokalee growing and getting involved and getting into preserves to collect this debris as well. Next slide, please. All right, this is our volunteers from United Way of Collier and the Keys, led by Carolina Heiser, and they were at the Airport Road Canal North. We do place large these are the dumpsters that were available to place at all of the site cleanups. They are placed on the morning of the event. They are collected on the afternoon of the event. And obviously it's probably a little bit bigger than what's needed, but we want to make sure that we're controlling the debris that we're collecting, and that we're not collecting it and having it blow somewhere else while we're waiting for someone to clean it up. So wonderful group of volunteers there. Next slide, please. These are our high school students from St. John Newman Key Club. Next slide, please. Off to the left, we've got partners from Walmart. And these partners from Walmart actually came from all of the different stores in Collier County. They put out a call for all of the employees to participate. And so they've got a lot of great opportunities to be cultivated for regular canal cleanup events. Very hard workers, very dedicated to what they do. And then off to the right, we've got another picture of Shirley Garcia and Haldeman Creek. Next slide, please. After the cleanup, the International Coastal Cleanup, we did conduct a litter assessment of some of the canal systems that we've been, monitoring for cleanups. And the good news is they all ranked very well. Our litter assessment index is a scale of 1 to 4, with 1 being the best and 4 being bring in machinery to help clean up. So we do, we are looking at these as potential sites to cultivate for future cleanups. Next slide, please. And here are the beautiful pictures. There are a few pieces of litter and debris, but overall, very well maintained and very well cared for. Next slide, please. So I'd like to invite you to save the date for our fiscal year 2026 cleanups. The Great American Cleanup will be on Saturday, March 28th. Our waterway cleanup in partnership with the Marco Island Association of Realtors will be July 25th. And then, of course, the International Coastal Cleanup will be September 19th. Next slide, please. With that, I would be happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you, Cindy. We really appreciate your presentation. Are there any questions from the board? Cindy, I wanted to say to you that I really appreciate your efforts and your partnership to look at ways for us to rekindle the partnership on the Adopt a Canal. I remember when I was first appointed to the Basin Board, now 7 years ago, and Lisa and I talking about that very thing as we were driving down Immokalee Road and looking at the Adopt a Canal program there and then throughout the county. So really appreciate your work on the whole program to recharge it, and then also to rekindle our partnership with the Adopt a Canal program. It's really important, and I think it gives another opportunity for folks to give back. Troy, is there any public comment?
We have no registered speakers and no hands raised on Zoom.
And I don't see any board questions for you, Cindy, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy.
Okay, that brings us to our technical report. We've got our field station activity report with Dan Walsh. Good afternoon, Dan.
Good afternoon. I am Dan, as you mentioned, Dan Walsh. I'm the new superintendent here at the BCB Field Station. During this presentation, we'll go over some of our recent maintenance activities and briefly touch on some upcoming projects. The Golden Gate 2 canal, or the Golden Gate Canal number 2, we had a sensor failure at this location. That sensor enables the water managers and to monitor the gate's current position. With that sensor down, the water managers in the control room are unable to operate the gates remotely. We sent a crew out to check it out. They determined the sensor was down, and as luck would have it, that sensor was located at the bottom of the bay. We had to bring divers in, install stop logs, dry out the bay, replace the sensor, and then we were able to recalibrate the system and put the structure back online. The Cocohatchee number 3, the gearbox repair, we were notified by the water managers that they had attempted to operate this gate remotely and it failed. We sent a crew out to troubleshoot. They found that it was receiving the signals. It had power available, so they determined it was a mechanical issue. They contacted the control room and the water managers, let them know what the issue was, and told them they'd like to take the gate offline to make the repairs. They were given authorization. They removed the gearbox, brought it into the field station, disassembled it, and discovered that the gears were significantly worn and one of the bearings had failed. They went ahead and ordered parts to replace it. While they ordered these parts, they realized that the gearbox adjacent to it, the next gate, was rebuilt or refurbished around the same time this one was, so they ordered a double set of parts. They went ahead, put this one back in service, removed the second one, found it was in similar condition, still functioning, but its time was really limited. So they repaired it, got it back in service as well. Our in-house mechanical vegetation. This time of year, or at the start of the summer rains, our canals get a huge influx of nutrient-rich water into them coming in from the lush green lawns and golf courses of our area's gated communities. This causes the vegetation to grow at an extremely accelerated rate. And because most of our canals are relatively shallow, they top out quickly. This really provides or creates an issue for us in moving water. So for several months of the year, our primary focus is removing this vegetation. The photo on the left you'll see is a Conver. This is a boat we utilize for it. It's very maneuverable, works well in shallow and mid-depth waters. The boat on the right is a towboat. We actually borrowed this vessel from Miami. It's much less maneuverable, but works in some of our works better than our equipment in some of our deeper canals, like the Golden Gate Canal. It'll drag this large steel plow along the bottom, about 50 foot behind the boat. It uproots and cuts off vegetation. After they work a certain area, they'll retrieve the plow onto the back of the boat and go around with the basket on the front, picking up that vegetation and depositing it on the banks. We also use contractual services for this work. The boat on the left is called a We-Do. Almost looks like a toy, but it works amazing in some of our shallower canals. Say the 951 Canal or Henderson Canal, where you have some areas in those where they're less than 2 foot deep. Our boats really struggle to work in those areas, but this boat does a tremendous job. The harvester on the right is very unique. I think we use this in Cocohatchee Canal. It moves along the piece in the front and goes down about 4 foot, 5 foot below the surface. and it's got what look like hedge trimmers on the bottom and on the sides. It'll cut the vegetation loose, and it has a conveyor belt in the front. That conveyor belt brings the vegetation up onto the boat and drops it beneath the driver's feet. There's also a conveyor belt beneath the driver's feet that goes out to the back of the boat. He can move the vegetation while he's working. If it builds up under him, he moves it a little further back and a little further back. When it's full, he just backs the boat up to a canal bank and hits the switch, and the conveyor belt unloads all the material onto the side slope of the canal where we can come back and pick it up. We recently welcomed 2 new employees to the field station. In this photo, you can see they're getting a crash course in the operation and maintenance of some of our harvesting equipment. And if anyone in the room is looking for a career change or knows somebody who's looking for employment, there's a QR code in the bottom right. Please scan the QR code, or let your friends know. It'll take you to a district's website that informs them of all the current opportunities within the district. Vehicle in FACA Union Canal. We're notified by Collier County whenever there's an issue in one of our canals. When vehicles go in, we try to respond to see if we can provide any assistance to rescue or law enforcement. Sometimes if they're located adjacent to one of our structures, they may want us to close the structure to reduce the flow to make it safe for their divers. And in this case, being in the FACA Union Canal, this was just upstream of the FACA Union pump station. At the time, they weren't pumping, so there were no issues there. But we show up. Sometimes they may just want to know where the nearest boat ramp is and how they can access it. Another vehicle in FACA Union. This was further to the north. This vehicle came in from the east side and almost made it out on the west side. Came a little bit short. But in this photo, you can see some of the damage caused when they remove the vehicles. We'll respond after and see how significant the damage is. It's usually very minor. We'll send a crew out the following week to make any of the necessary repairs to avoid erosion issues in the future. If the damage is significant, we'll discuss it with our HR, or not HR department, our safety department, and they'll work with the vehicle owner's insurance and to get reimbursement. The manatee mitigation area. This has become an ongoing issue for us. The public, I guess, get very curious with this project. They want to see what's going on inside, so they continually cut the cable to access the area. Sometimes it may be fishermen that, being a fisherman, I know if I'm told I'm not allowed in there, that's where all the fish are. But they cut the cable, and you can see the photo here. We made this photo for the board meeting. We repaired everything. The following week, we were notified again, it was cut again. FWC is aware of the issue, and they do patrol the area and do the best they can, but obviously they can't be everywhere all the time. New security fencing at the 951 number 2 structure. This fence has been involved in multiple vehicular accidents, and a lot of vandalism, again, from fishermen who realize that, it's off limits, so the fishing must be better from within the structure. They cut holes in it. It was time to be replaced and to protect our equipment from the public, and as well as the public from our equipment. We had new fencing installed all around it. Our 3-month outlook, we're going to continue our structural or seasonal structural changes, continue to monitor the progress of the Lake Trafford Tower, and we have several debris projects planned. We're just waiting to get caught up on our vegetation issues, and we'll move forward with those. Some of our SERP projects. We recently provided a tour of the Merritt and FACA Union pump station to staff from Collier County. These are employees that we work with on a daily basis. They're in charge of maintaining and operating the secondary system. We had our water managers on site, as well as pump station staff, that provided a tremendous amount of information. I think everybody came out of this meeting with a better understanding of our pump operations. If they got half out of it, what I did, it was a success. Our SCADA monitoring assistance. With the Picayune project in full swing and the water elevations, accompanying it, it's made accessing some of the remote SCADA sites a little more challenging. They recently requested assistance accessing a few of their sites, so we borrowed a swamp buggy from land management and gave them a ride. They were able to access the sites they needed to, made the repairs that were required and got the data they needed. You can see the vehicle in the bottom right. I guess they either overestimated their vehicle's capability or underestimated the water levels in the area. We talked to forestry. They were aware that the vehicle was there and everybody was okay. Pump station exterior maintenance. We replaced some of the lighting with LED lights and the never-ending painting that goes on in those pump stations. Oh, while we're on this one, I want to let you know, there is quite a bit of interesting work that goes on inside the pump stations, but because we're limited in photographing in there, it's, we don't see those. In our 3-month outlook, we're going to complete some HMI upgrades in the FACA Union pump station. We're preparing for the turnover of the Southwest Protection Levee from the Army Corps of Engineers. We recently met with some of our contractors on site to show them the area and let them know what we're going to be requiring of them in the near future, and continue to our recruitment efforts. And again, we have the QR code if anyone's interested. And questions if anybody has any.
Vice Chair Smith?
Great job, Dan. Welcome. Are those critical positions that are?
That are available
Yeah.
right now. Actually, we're doing really well now. We have 2 in background that are being filled, and we only have 1. We have a stationary diesel operator mechanic is the only position we currently have open in the field station.
Yeah. It's 30-year low for sales and real estate. I'll share the love. You never know. They might want to switch jobs. I don't know.
There's several available outside the field station.
Yeah. The work that you do with the weed do and the harvester,
Mhm.
you do those weekly, or is it something where, and the reason I'm asking is you're borrowing it, is it worth looking into buying it, or?
Yeah, those we contract from different, from vendors, and we'll contract them for, say, 3 weeks for 1 or 2. It's more of a seasonal thing, as you know here. A lot of the time, during the winter months, some of our canals go almost bone dry. It's just the initial impact from all that nutrient-rich water that causes everything to grow at such an accelerated rate. So the equipment we have is adequate.
That makes sense. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Michelle McLeod?
Yes, thank you, Dan. Just a quick question. When you remove the muck, I call it muck, vegetation from these canals, and you put it on the bank, what do you do with it afterwards? Like, where do you take it?
We try to let it dry for a little while, though, because it does. It's kind of an eyesore and it begins to smell. But if it sits there for a little while, we lose a lot of the water weight. So we pick it up. It goes to a landfill. But if we lose some of the water weight, it doesn't cost nearly as much for us to dispose of it. To do something environmentally friendly with it would be a little trickier because it does have a large amount of debris in it.
So there's a landfill just for this kind of stuff?
It basically, I think they take just about anything that's legal to dispose of.
Okay, interesting. Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions for Dan? Dan, I think it's really great that you were able to host the Collier County partners out
Oh.
there. I think that's just great when you can come together and see what each other's jobs
Absolutely.
really are and how you work together. So great job on that. Go ahead, PJ.
You don't have any weird animal or like alligators crawling up the wall kind of?
I was just talking to Jesus about that. Next presentation, we're going to go with something a little different. I just figured we'd go with our natives on the first round. The next presentation, we'll come up with something.
Looking forward to it.
You got it.
Thank
You mean what he finds out there on the
Yes.
side? Well, he'd probably appreciate that better than cars in the canal.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering if it correlated with Andrew or if it just wasn't happening.
Great. Thank you, Dan. I don't
Thank you
see any
very
other
much.
questions. Thank you. All right, then it brings us to our water conditions report with Brad Jackson.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, board members. I'm Brad Jackson, Principal Engineer for the Big Cypress Basin, and I'll go through the water conditions since our last board meeting in August and kind of give you an update on what we've seen this wet season, where we're at right now, and what we might see going into the dry season. So I'll start off with as we always do, this is our year-to-date rainfall summary. This is from January to now. And the takeaway here is so far this calendar year, we're about 82% of normal. That is below average. However, most of that rainfall deficit occurred outside of this water year, this past dry season. So you can kind of see January, February, March, April, those were all below average. And this wet season's been typically about normal so far. You can see on the slide here, this particular wet season kicked off May 22nd, which is exactly the average start date for a wet season in Florida. And we also ended on October 10th this year, 2 days shy of our average. So a very normal duration of our wet season. And that brings me to the next slide, which talks about our water year, which started on May 1st. Just focus on this. This is how much water we get in the wet season and kind of how much will we have to carry us through the next coming dry season is how I like to think about it. So what you can see here so far this year, we're at about 42 inches since May. If you were to think about what we would normally get that time in that same duration, we're about 45, 46 inches. So really only about a 3-inch deficit this wet season. I mean, most of the deficits from the dry season are erased at this point. So really 90% of average for this wet season so far. The graph on the top, I'll explain this a little bit. The red line here, this is the accumulated rainfall starting back on May 1st, and the red line is this year. The black line, that's your average. The blue line, for example, that's last year. So you can compare and contrast where we were last year. We're way up here at this time of year in 2024. And then this year, we're really close to average. So I know there's been some discussion about how weird the wet season's been and everything like that. But really looking at the regional rainfall that we've gotten, we're pretty average for this localized, in the BCB basin. And I'll jump into a little bit more about where that rainfall fell since our last board meeting and why people might think it's a little drier than normal. And mostly that's because of September. September was below average. The wet seasons did kind of give us a little bit of a pause. We only got about 70% of the normal rainfall for September. And it was really hit or miss on where the rainfall actually fell. If you look at the graph on the left, your average numbers would be this kind of sign or this beige yellowish color. That would be normal. The blues are below normal and the reds are above normal. So you see big swaths of the populated area where people are paying attention to where it's raining are below average. Other places in the natural areas you're above average. So it really depends on where you are. But generally speaking, that month was below normal, and that's where most of our deficit came from because we usually average about 9 inches that month. If you look at October, we did move into dry season, just like we always do around the first part of the month. But so far, we've received about our normal amount of rainfall for this particular month. We've got 103% of average so far. We might get a little bit more the rest of the month, probably not. So we'll probably end up right around normal for this time of the month. There are some areas that were below average, some that were above, but typically speaking, October was pretty uniform on the rainfall that we got, and it was in the first 10 days typically. So where did I've got a graph here that kind of shows the canals, and I'm going to start with the Golden Gate Canal. I've got a new graphic on here this month. It's similar to what you've seen in the past, but a little bit more information to show here. So I want to focus on the top here. This is the daily rainfall that you receive within the entire watershed of the Golden Gate, Maine. So each bar represents one line or one day, and that's how much rain fell on that particular day. So you can see the wet season started right here where the cursor is and then ended over here where the cursor is here. And then down in the middle, these are our normal canal levels. The purple represents GG4, which is this particular structure in the upper part. And then the yellow is GG1, the coastal structure. And then remember, the green band is the same as I've always shown them. It's kind of your middle 50th percentile. So that's where we are most of the time. And the takeaway here is this year we've been running the system because it's only at average. We didn't know how much rain we were going to get. We've been running it as much as we can above normal a little bit because it hasn't been overly wet. So we have been above this green line most of the year, like for example in GG1. But you can really see before the dry season really takes hold in the middle of September, we started that transition from the flood control operations and really tried to capture every last drop of the wet season that was still left and top everything off. And we did that throughout the region. Then on the bottom here, and I won't spend so much time on the next slides, but I just wanted to explain this one since it's new. You've got the discharges coming out of each one of these control structures, the number, the amount of water moving through it. So the yellow line here, that represents the daily flow at Golden Gate 1. You see it goes upwards of 1,000, but most of the year we're below this 500 CFS. If you were to compare that to last year when we were very wet, you would be seeing 1,000 to 1,500 to 2,000 CFS per day at that structure. So its design capacity is between 4,000 and 5,000, somewhere in that ballpark. So we're really got a lot of capacity in the system. So we're able to hold the water that we do receive from Mother Nature. So this one, and I'll go through all these very quickly now. This is the Cocohatchee Canal, and the takeaway here is this is the same story. We're basically maintaining the water levels above this green band, and you can see the transition to dry season as we move from September to October and try to hold as much water as possible. Also, just to highlight why we were able to let the field station take Coco 3 offline and do that gearbox replacement. The flow through Coco 3 is this purple line here at the very bottom, and you can see how small that number was. If we had a wet season and this was several hundred CFS, we wouldn't have been able to allow that, and we would have had to do something different. So we really have to take into account the conditions in the ground to make sure that we can still operate the system as we need to. But this allowed us to approve the change for Coco 3 when they took the actual gearbox apart and was able to work on it. It's the similar story here in FACA Union. The takeaway here is really not up here at FACA Union 1, but down here on FACA Union, I'm sorry, not up here on FACA Union 5, but down here on FACA Union number 1. This summer, remember, the Miller Canal was finally plugged, and the water that used to come out of FACA Union 1 doesn't come out of this weir anymore. It's sitting on the landscape, going through the culverts underneath 41, and you can see that happen right here back in July, where that water level at the FACA Union 1 is now hovering along the historical minimum for that particular site. So the water that used to go out, escape out that way, is now sitting, doing its job, and it is restoration. So that's the kind of takeaway here and the thing we're looking for. So that's good to see. And Henderson Creek, just more of the same here, a good story indicator of how well we're able to manage the water and keep things up as high as we can so we don't waste our fresh water, our resource. So I do have one slide here on Picayune Strand restoration. I also want to talk a little bit about Corkscrew since it's highlighted on here too. And there was some discussion about Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary and bird rookery and all that today. But this graphic here on the left, this loop, it started in May 1st. This is each snapshot is 1 day. So you can see the change in water level from May 1st through the whole, basically a couple days ago. And the blue indicates the water on the surface. The darker the blue, the deeper the water. If it's red, it's below the ground surface. So you can see how it starts in May and builds up to its maximum. So you can already see the Picayune Strand restoration. And the picture on the left, I'm sorry, the right, that's an aerial shot just from this last week. So there's still water on the landscape doing what it's supposed to do at this time of year. But the thing I also wanted to focus on is in the Corkscrew area. And there was some discussion about how the rainfall has been strange this year and it's maybe hit or miss, but that might be somewhat localized. So when I look at, and I spent some time looking at the data back there while everyone was talking, if you look at some of the the gauges that are east of the washout road, which is kind of the Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary boundary, and the area that Laura mentioned was too wet. So I see those areas are above average for this time of year. I mean, they're at their 75th percentile. And then if I look at the southern side of it, at the Shady Hollow, the Corkscrew Canal, those areas that showed too dry, or where our canals are, those areas are at their historical maximums also. So we're not able to hold any more water inside the canal system. So something's going on right in the heart of the Corkscrew Sanctuary where something different, because we've got too high water on the east side and just as much water as we can possibly hold on the south side. So that's, hopefully the Corkscrew Swamp, the CWI project helps inform some of that so we can really figure out what's going on. Because everything to the east of that washout road, Lake Trafford, Camp Key Strand, are all about normal for this time of year. So it wouldn't be moving into dry season and talk a little bit about groundwater. And basically where we stand right now, the groundwater wells that are on the slide here are all in the normal indicator range. Maybe some of them are a little bit below normal, but it's not something abnormal at this point. Everything looks fine from a groundwater perspective for these wells here. You may see that some of them are a little lower than you would normally see in October. That's just probably because we had a very dry September, or somewhat dry September, but it's not somewhere we haven't been before. So if you look at this slide, the right, the yellows and the oranges and the reds on the southwest coast are our wells, and those indicate below average water levels for this time of year. But also, if you look back in 2023, they look the same. So we've been in this position before, and it's not something that it's worth monitoring, making sure. But at this point, it's not anything concerning that we haven't seen before. So looking forward, what can we expect this dry season? Well, we don't really know, but there's equal chances right now. The models are showing it could be wetter than normal, it could be drier than normal. We don't really know. There might be a chance for below normal rainfall. So that's one of the other reasons we moved into conserving water so quickly. The hurricane season, so far, we're at the tail end of it. We got a little bit more to go. It goes through the end of the month. So far, there's been about 13 named storms, 5 hurricanes, and that's not too far from average, which is like 14 and a half named storms. And in the short term, the picture on the left, that's our rainfall forecast for the next week. So basically very dry. It's not even a 1/10 of an inch in rainfall. And then in the tropics, that was Melissa as it went through Jamaica just a few days ago. But other than that, there's no other highlights for us to monitor in the tropics at this point. But that was something to watch for sure, that Melissa going through like that. And I will close there. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Brad, for your presentation. Questions for Brad? Go ahead, Andy.
La Nina, El Nino situation. Do you have any readings on where we stand there? I know it's kind of a weak system right now. Waiting for
I
nudge.
believe it's a weak La Nina that's predicted, which is probably why the climate models are showing equal both ways. It's not
Right.
really a good, strong indicator of a drier than normal, at least in our part of the world. But
Thank-
probably not long, hopefully not too long lived. Yeah.
Any other questions for Brad? Thank you for your presentation, Brad.
Thank you.
Yes, Brad. Okay, that brings us to our staff reports. We have our monthly financial report with Julie Maytalk, and I believe Julie's on Zoom.
Hi, good afternoon, Chairwoman and Basin board members. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good afternoon. I'd like to give you all some highlights from the monthly financial statement for the month of August that is included in your packet. For the revenues for the month of August, your ad valorem, we have collected above our budgeted ad valorem revenue and are on trend with the same time last year. Our interest earned on investment funds is $592,350. Moving on to our expenditures and encumbrances, as of the end of August, the Basin has spent $12 million of its $31.9 million budget, and $15.5 million is encumbered/obligated. The largest encumbrance of $13.9 million is in the operations and maintenance of land and works program, And that is where your Big Cypress Basin Field Station is located and the Big Cypress Basin Capital Program. A significant amount of that encumbrance is related to the Basin Capital Program projects, the ones that Lucinée was touching base on in her presentation, the tower, the I-75 number 2, the Bird Rookery Boardwalk, and the Gordon and Palm River structure replacements. The other encumbrance of $1.6 million is in the Water Resources Planning and Monitoring Program, and that is largely made up of the CWI planning study you heard about earlier and basin support. Overall, the basin looks good financially, and I don't have anything significant to report or any red flags to bring to your attention. That concludes my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Julie. That's a good report for us, and I appreciate it. Are there any questions for Julie? I don't see any questions. Any public comment? No. Okay, Julie, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That brings us to our next general public comment. This is another chance for members of the public to speak on anything that is not covered or was not covered in today's meeting. Is there any public comment, Troy? There's no general public comment, which brings us to the final board comment. And we'll go ahead and start with you, Michelle McLeod.
Yes, nothing for me. Thank you, Chair.
Mike, go ahead.
Nothing for me. Thank you.
Andy?
I got some good pictures of spoonbills on here on my phone if anybody would like to see them afterwards.
Okay, well, that's good. Michelle Leonard?
Nothing for me, thank you.
And Vice Chair Smith?
There's a few pythons caught in my HOA, which you probably read about. Oh, yes.
Wow.
So I can't wait to have our next update on python hunting. Thank you, Lisa, and for the great reports and everyone that participated. It's always educational, but just excellent reports. That's all I have.
Great, and I'll go ahead and kind of wrap up. You know, the staff just does such a great job to make this meeting such a success and run so smoothly. And today we again have cupcakes to celebrate our new board member, our returning board member, and all of the great reports and our participants today in today's meeting. And so I want to make sure, since we didn't take a break during our meeting, that you grab a cupcake on the way out, or at least show your appreciation for all the great work that they do to set up these meetings. I really, really appreciate everyone's participation today and all of the great work that the staff team does to make this run so smoothly. I'd like to welcome Celia Seifert. Welcome aboard. You're joining a great team. The Basin team is really wonderful. And so hopefully you'll just jump right in as you did today and be a part of it all. One question that I have for, I guess, Rachel. Rachel, were you able to get the photos of the board earlier in today's meeting? Because if not, we could huddle for a quick photo after this meeting. Okay, so if the board members, if you're not pressed for time, would that be okay if we just huddle in front of the days and then Rachel will take some board photos, because I think it's an opportunity. We'll have her from West Palm Beach with the right camera and everything else to take the photo. So it would really be great if we could do that. Our next meeting is going to be in the new year, right? So this is the last meeting of the year, and it'll be February 27th. At 2026 at 11 a.m. right here. And so we're adjourned.
Happy holidays.